Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this Q&A. My name is Yasmina Tawil, and I am the Director of Film Programming at the Arab Film and Media Institute. AFMI is the first organization of its kind outside of the Arab world. It is a unique ecosystem to find, nurture, and develop Arab film and media projects and talent. Today's talkback is part of our third annual Arab Women in the Arts Showcase, which honors generations of Arab women who have excelled in and revolutionized all forms of artistic expression. And with us, we have the director of the film Sirens, Rita Baghdadi. Hi, Rita.
Hi.
If I don't know where, people who are watching this, how they got here. If you have not seen the film, it's playing on Saturday, April 8th at Film Noir Cinema in Brooklyn, New York, and online at arabfilm.us/women. But hopefully, if you're watching this, you've seen the film. Yeah, that would make more sense. Oh, and I just want to give a quick shout out to the co-presenter of the film, Yellow Punk, who I'm repping here, and everyone watching should go check them out. And I want to thank them and the founder, Rita, or not Rita. Wow, I'm a little bit tired today. I want to thank Rena for their support. But anyways, yeah, thanks, Rita, for talking to us and sharing your film with us. I'm so excited that it gets to be a part of the showcase and we get to show your work as an incredible filmmaker, as well as the music of the band Slaves to Sirens, who are really fit into this theme of revolutionizing arts, in the Arab world. Just kind of starting basic, how did you learn about Slaves to Sirens and what led you from learning about the band to wanting to make a film about them?
Yeah, I found Slave to Sirens online. I found them through their music. It was in 2018 when they had just put out their EP. And
Mhm.
so they had a couple, they had 4 songs online and they had gotten a few articles written about them, a little bit of press. And so somehow they came to my attention. I'm always looking for new music. I've always been into heavier music, as a teenager. I listened to like punk and hardcore um and so when I listened to them, I was, just sort of blown away by their sound and their talent, and I just really wanted to know more about them. And so when I read a couple little articles about them, and I saw a picture of all 5, young women standing in a forest in Lebanon, wearing all black, and I just was really intrigued by them, and so I reached out on Facebook and just introduced myself and sort of asked what they were up to, and Lilas was the one to answer, and so we sort of struck up a online conversation and online relationship, friendship. Yeah, we just sort of Skype for hours talking about life and all kinds of stuff, and then a couple months later, so that was probably in like June, I think, of 2018, and then November, I took a trip to visit her
Mhm.
outside of Beirut.
And yeah, and then it's just all history from there.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I was sort of very open about what maybe we would make a short, or maybe, who knows what it would be, and I said
Mhm.
that to her at the time. Met the rest of the band, and they all seemed really into the idea of making something together, so I just kind of went with the idea that I'll shoot for a couple days and see what happens. And as soon as I got there and you know started rolling, essentially, really like started meeting them in person and started rolling, I quickly realized like how even deeper, than the conversations that me and Leela had, like deeper the stories go, and how the themes, were really resonant, and all the things that they were going through. And this was even before the revolution started, and
Mhm.
so it just got richer and richer and richer. So I think after the first trip, I knew for sure we could make a feature.
Mhm. And you ended up filming for more than a few days. Um, how long was it? A few years, correct?
Years.
That's incredible. How do you take that many years of footage and start to like whittle it down and find the stories within it and what you want to share with an audience?
It's a good question. I think there's probably many ways to do it. The way that we did it, so I kind of knew after maybe the first year, about a year in, I think
Hmm.
I knew who I wanted to focus on and why, and I knew like sort of what the story could be,
Hmm.
but I didn't know if I was going to be able to pull it off in the way that I wanted, because I wanted to make a very immersive, in the moment, verite, you know, unfolding in front of your eyes film. I didn't want to tell
Hmm.
like a backstory and do interviews and make a traditional sort of rock doc. And so I wanted to change the genre a little bit. And so in the way that I wanted to do it, I was like, okay, I see the story, I see who the main characters are, but can I pull it off? And so I kind of just, kept shooting until I knew we had full enough arc. And then I brought on Lindsay Utz. She's an incredible editor. I brought her on as a supervising editor, and her
Hmm.
process, she's known for, she cut the Billie Eilish doc and American Factory, which won the Oscar. And she's known for taking like 1,000 hours of footage, and making something incredible. So while I didn't have that much footage, I only had a couple 100 hours. I knew that it was going to take a long time and a sensitive eye and a little bit of
Hmm.
guidance. And obviously then we I brought on our editor Grace Sara, and together we got the footage from however many hundred to about 10 hours,
Hmm.
and then we watched that as a string out. We watched it over 2 days, 5 hours each day, and then essentially we had a meeting, and they were like, okay, what's the movie you want to make? So I told them the story. I kind of left it open until then, and I told them the story. I was like, okay, it's going to be this story about, um, the two guitarists and their friendship and just all the complications. And meanwhile, you have the revolution happening, and so essentially, sort of all agreed on that and signed off on it. But except Lindsay wasn't quite sure that, again, she wasn't quite sure I could pull it off, because some of the story hinges on a backstory.
Hmm.
So that was for us to sort of, perfect as we went. And yeah, and then essentially like Grace went and cut, for several weeks, and we narrowed it down to like, we basically kept whittling it from like 10 hours to 6 hours and 4 hours.
Hmm.
Just this, only the strongest material remained essentially, even though there's still a lot
Yeah.
of really stuff on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, I can imagine after 3 years with, you know, five incredible women and, and so much going on in the world during that time. Yeah, I can truly only imagine what you had to begrudgingly remove. um, I love, speaking of the backstory, like I love that you don't structure it like a traditional rock doc, not only because the content ends up not being just a traditional story of a band, but also like a lot of that backstory comes out much later in the film, especially about the relationship between Lilas and Shery and things like that. I also love how much nuance you're able to get into the film, like in terms of the rounded nature of all of the women and the situation going on, their softness and their heaviness. And I don't know if I'm describing this right, but you really, I was rewatching the film before this, and I had forgotten that Lilas also, taught children for some time, which is not something you'd expect out of a metalhead. And like, yeah, the mix of like the sweetness of their friendship and um yeah, I think that there's always going to be that juxtaposition when you're talking about a metal band, because everyone expects those people to be hard and angry and aggressive, and ultimately most people are not like that. But I know you made some conscious decisions in how you balance these, like the hard and the soft, um in the story, and there's a lot of that duality. Can you speak a little bit to like the conscious decisions you made to get that well-roundedness and get that balance and show all of that? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it kind of, I mean, it became apparent when I started shooting that there were all these little moments of just their friendship and just daily life and just a lot of giggling and a lot of, just being a young woman and um, figuring out your place in the world and your relationship with your parents and with your dog and whatever it may be that existed outside of the practice scenes and outside of the music scene and just had was integral to their who they are as people, but and what kind of music they made, but really was like almost like a different persona than when you put when you put the leather on and you go and
Mhm.
it's sort of a performance, right? And while they were steeped in it and they lived the metal lifestyle, it's like at the same time, it's like, Lilas's favorite color is purple and she has a cute little dog and like, there's a lot of like giggling and just like you said, softness. And I always wanted to make a coming of age film. And so I think I just sort of wanted to lean into just being a young woman of all the and just, whatever that means
Mhm.
for people uh and also, I mean, it wasn't, I kind of knew that we were going to have to find a way to balance the music that they played with like the score of the film, like the scenes and
Mhm.
how they were going to function with music as like an editing tool and as like a, mood setting tool. And I knew that I wasn't going to like wall to wall score the film with their music because it's just a different style and I
Mhm.
think you want to reserve those times that you hear their music as like this special, like, okay, like we're really in the moment with their music. And so, but that didn't really come about until we started editing, where I knew that I started temping, with Parone's music. He
Mhm.
had a film called Girlhood that I really loved, Celine Sciamma's film, and I remember using one of the songs, and I was like, "This works. Like this fits. There's something really beautiful and different about his music than about their music, which sort of worked together." So that was another way
Mhm.
that we balanced the sort of softness with the heaviness of the revolution and all the dark themes that were going on and all of the screaming and all of the sort of raw emotion with the more like internal, yeah, like things going on up here and in the heart that you don't necessarily hear or see but
Mhm.
feel it.
Yeah. Speaking of the political stuff, um, I imagine in the lead up to the release of this film, people have probably asked a lot about the choice to include that, but I know as a Lebanese person that the personal and the political in general, but especially right now in Lebanon, are so intertwined. I don't think there was any way that you could have not included it. I also really like that I like films like this that show Western audiences I keep using the word nuance, but the nuance in living in these kinds of situations, because you can start getting this false idea that like that every day and every minute is horrible, that people living in these places are sort of overly aggressive and uncivilized and things like that. And a film like this really reminds us that we are much more similar than we are different, and our struggles are different, but they're like it's really relatable. I don't really have a question at the end of this. It's just I just really appreciate a film with that kind of mix and that nuance. Yeah, I I
Yeah.
don't have a question. I'm sorry.
No, I
But
appreciate.
I think this is why this is part of the reason though why I love the film so much and have like advocated it for it so much and have made all my friends watch it to be like, look, this is like we have in Lebanon cool people, strong women, like badass punks and metalheads. But but there's also all of this stuff happening that we sometimes don't even hear about here, and this is what it's like to live with it. So sorry for interrupting you.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, I love that, and it's exactly why I wanted to make this film in the first place. I mean, I'm Moroccan American, so grew up, with my dad's side in Morocco, and when I'm in America, people would ask me, "Oh, do you take a camel to work?" And I mean, just like literally very dumb things, but also growing up in the shadows of the Iraq War, 9/11, and all of these horrible world events that happened in the Arab world that really shaped how the media treats Arab people. I feel like really damaged me. Like I didn't realize it till I was like in my 30s, and I'm like, yeah, this it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
And so, and while there are plenty of nuanced films that come out of the Arab world, they just don't get seen. But that was my mission. I really wanted to make a film that could be to tell a complex story about women growing up in the region that you maybe hadn't seen before, but that was very real and very raw and very, like you said, nuanced, and human. And that's exactly what I set out to do with Sirens. And so, while we didn't know the revolution was going to happen, I knew that there was going to be a backdrop of Beirut and a backdrop of Lebanon. And it's at the very least, if, say the revolution hadn't happened, at the very least, it would be infused with Lilas's mom's experience having grown up during the Civil War, and whether it's not like we were going to cut back to that time, but um, all of these generational, traumas that would be apparent in the film, and that's inherently political. And so,
Hmm.
everyone sort of lives with it, and that's a big part of being Lebanese, let's say, but let
Yeah.
alone another country. And there's
Yeah.
all kinds of other historical generational traumas and political things. So
Yeah, and even like you said, if there wasn't the revolution, not only the history of the Civil War that is its effects are ongoing, but the despite the country being somewhat secular, or mixed religiously, that there's still this like deep conservatism that makes it hard for bands like Slaves to Siren to exist safely, and women like Lilas and Shery to exist, that would have been inherent to the story regardless of everything else. Um, yeah, I've heard stories of punk bands of people getting accused of Satanism and threatened with arrest and stuff like that. Did I know in the film we see at least one time where the girls are not allowed to play because they're a metal band. Did Were there any other situations in the couple of years that you guys spent together that there was like concern for safety, or people like I maybe like in person maybe took their feelings out on the band or anything like that?
not so much like, I mean, the girls sort of existed in a bubble in a way of their own,
Hmm.
like of their own making, which is beautiful, which is how you survive as you surround
Yeah.
yourself with be. And so there was a lot of support for them in their hometown, within the metal community and within just people who, just musicians in general. And but there was a lack of sort of venues to play at. Yeah,
Hmm.
like you said, there is a holdover from like the early 90s. And I think the story really all stemmed with like Nirvana and how Kurt Cobain took his own life, and essentially it spiraled into how heavy music, is sort of the devil's work, and it will, cause you to commit suicide, which is a sin in certain religions. And I think it all sort of stems from, yeah, like one sort of mythological story. But um so there was a fair amount of like you said, conservative talk. But I think the only other like instance of sort of safety in that regard was the whole Byblos festival with Masha Leila, which is a blip in the film. But again, it was sort of like a bit of a side story, so we didn't go too far into it. But essentially, Masha Leila had some iconic imagery, and they were threatened, and then the same people turn their sort of sights on Within Temptation, another metal band, and then and Sirens was supposed to open up for them. And so essentially they all stopped, they weren't going to play at the festival anymore. And so that was another thing. They were, it was pretty threatening and scary at the time.
Yeah. This is kind of an aside, but there's a short doc called Beirut Dreams in Color that I feel like complements Sirens so well in exploring music and being queer in the Arab world. For those watching this, it's focuses on Mashrua Leila, but it does speak sort of to Lebanon and then the Middle East Arab world as like a larger place, and yeah, about those connections and the struggle and all the people who are working to make it better, safer, happier for everyone. So this is just a general recommendation to those watching, that I think it's like the two films together would make like a really wonderful pairing in exploring that kind of thing. Sort of going back to how you made the film, as someone who has never made a documentary, how do you capture, like, how do you go about bringing your camera into these like really personal and intimate situations? How do you go about capturing that kind of stuff? I know it can't be easy, at least to get people to act naturally and authentically, but you do such a good job of it. So how do you go about that?
I mean, it's nothing that I'm doing other than I think, being a genuine human who like cares and isn't in it for anything other than to capture authenticity. Like, it's not like I didn't come with like a giant budget. Not to say that like you can't make a great film if you're fully funded, which we should all be so lucky. But like, I'm like, I'm paying to be here. I'm just here with my camera. Like, I want to capture authenticity. But at the same time, it really just, it all depends. And every film is so different, but it really depends on a willing participant, on someone who wants to be filmed, on someone who wants to open themselves up in that way. And I think a lot of people don't know what that means at first. And certainly over 3 years, you have a lot of conversations, and you have a lot of ups and downs, and you have times when things don't go right, or times when things are going great. And in every film I question, heavily, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But with, Sirens, I think we all just aligned as young women wanting to tell a more authentic story out of the region. So we had that in common, and that really was a good baseline. And there was a baseline of trust that me and Lilas had built up, just over, video chatting for so many months, and learning about each other, and the whys of it all. But in terms of capturing authenticity, like, when I say there's a willing participant, like Lilas, for example, all the girls, but let's choose Lilas because she's sort of the lead of the film. There were no times when she wasn't just herself. Like, she didn't know how to be anything but herself. Like, she didn't have a role to play. She didn't have a reason to play a role, or really yeah, I mean, it's like you have your stage persona, but like that's somehow a little bit different. Like, on camera she was the same on camera as off, and so it made my
Hmm.
job really easy. I didn't really have to ever say, oh, just be yourself. I think that I'm sure there's lots of instances of that in documentary where you kind of have to make people comfortable, and
Hmm.
but for me it really starts with a willing participant, and I think that's the true test of like of authenticity, is like you don't have to ask someone to be themselves, they just are, and that's it shows on camera. It's like it's beautiful.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I think being taking the time to develop a friendship and a relationship beforehand, I imagine helps a lot. And I know you and Lilas became, and I believe still are, really good friends. Yeah. Um, so I know that where the band leaves off in the documentary and where the band is now are very different. For those watching, do you know what's going on with the band, what they're up to?
Yeah, so unfortunately, Maya, the vocalist, and Tatyana, the drummer, left the band, and just life took them in a different direction, and they're pursuing other things, and that's okay. But it really was sort of a magical, that they all found each other in the first place. So
Hmm.
they had to they found a new vocalist, which is
Hmm.
amazing. She's been learning the songs, she's been recording. So
Hmm.
they're not giving up. They're still recording their album. It's just taken a lot longer than they had hoped. And yeah, that's hopefully going to be done, within the next few months. And individually, they're all the the band are doing as good as they can. I mean, Alma, the bassist, now lives in Florida, and her whole family has moved there, so that's a beautiful thing because for a while they were sort of split up. And Lilas is now a fun pivot. Lilas, she came to New York for the opening
Hmm.
of the film, and tried a real bagel for the first time. She thought she had eaten bagels in her
Yeah.
life in Lebanon, and then when she tried a New York bagel, she's like, "Oh wow!" So she, being the ambitious, she's an amazing cook. Anything she sets her mind to cook, she can make amazingly, and no doubt learned from her mom.
Hmm.
And so she set out to recreate a New York bagel in Lebanon, and she's been doing it, and now she's making money off of it. Like she's started a business.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, so anybody in Lebanon watching this, or know somebody in Lebanon that wants to eat bagels, go seek Lilas out and buy some bagels. And Shery's got another band side project she's been really into, and so the girls they're hanging in there. The country itself, I don't know. I mean, the dollar is down to what, 100,000? It's very bleak.
Yeah. As of recording this, the city of Beirut now has two time zones as well. Have you heard about this? Uh, I don't know all the details, but apparently they have there's a debate about whether or not they're doing daylight savings, and there's a split in the city.
God.
So one side is or is split in the country. So yeah, one side is 1 hour ahead, the other's an hour behind. So uh, going well.
I mean,
um,
just the sort of yeah, the split in government, the way that nobody agrees on how, and it just seems like another symptom of that. Interesting.
yeah,
Hmm.
hopefully things will improve soon, and then hopefully, of course, the band, we would love to. I can't wait to hear their new album, their new music. I know the music video that we see them shooting in the film is out now, so I'll you know at some point this conversation will be up on YouTube, so I'll link it for everyone to watch and support the band because they're not gone.
Yeah,
Um,
they're still hanging in there. So please reach out to them, and tell them you saw the film, and follow their band on Instagram. And you will see them at music festivals in the future. I know there's so much interest in them. They just gotta get through this last step and finish the album so that they have the material to play, and it'll be amazing.
Yeah, maybe next year's Arab Women in the Arts Showcase. Maybe we have not done live music yet as part of this, so maybe next year.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
To sort of, I have a couple like last questions to wrap things up. First of all, I mean, we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but you know, what do you hope audiences, especially non-Arab audiences, non-Lebanese audiences, what do you hope that they take away from the story that you tell in the film?
I mean, I think we touched on it earlier, where it's the nuance of life, and just like you said, more we are more alike than we think maybe sometimes, or that we've been led
Mhm.
to believe by the media. Just seeing daily life as more than seeing women, let's say, in the region as more than victims, that have their own agency and their own really cool lives they're living. And we're seeing that play out in Iran. It's like women, we're just like, let's be able to imagine women as more than
Mhm.
pawns governments, or um, they're living really interesting, complex lives, just like. And the reason I say that is not because it wasn't true, but it's because in film it's always been men
Yeah.
that get these roles.
Mhm.
So let's see more women in those roles. And um, yeah, just sort of taking a more nuanced, taking away something more nuanced than you've seen before, especially if you're not familiar with the region or haven't watched a lot of amazing cinema, which there is, out of the region.
I agree. I really do hope people take that away from this film and explore more of the incredible work that Arab women create, both in the Arab world and out here in the diaspora. And what about you? Do you have anything exciting on the horizon that you can share with us?
Yeah, well, so since Sirens, I really want to I want to continue making films in the region and in the same vein, and for the
Mhm.
same purpose. And so my next story I'm following is in Morocco, which
Okay.
I'm really excited to to be spend more time in, now. And I won't say more than that yet, so I don't want to jinx it, but
Yeah.
but it'll very much be like a sort of follow up. I want to make like a triptych, so three
Mhm.
films that are in the same vein of Sirens that take place in different parts of the MENA region, but all more or less sort of coming of age stories. And yeah, and then I've got a couple other projects. One that's wrapping up this year. It's about a photographer, Palestinian photographer. So also very much explores themes that I'm really care about and really into, and
Mhm.
that'll be on Disney Plus next year.
Exciting. Exciting to hear that Disney will have something about a Palestinian person on it.
Oh yeah, it's through
Yeah.
Nat Geo, but like everything on Nat Geo goes on Disney. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're just in the edit, and which is painful to narrow down all the footage like we were
Yeah.
talking about. It's gonna be good.
Well, that is so exciting. I know I am really looking forward to seeing everything that you create moving forward. I'm so excited to hear what the band does next, of course, as well. And I want to thank you so much for talking to me about this. And please extend, you know, my hellos, my thank yous to the band. I know that just putting the film about them on screen is not a whole lot of work on their part, but always a thank you to them for sharing their story with us, because it's not always easy to do that, and to be so honest, um, and stuff. So thank you to all of you so much.
Thank you for showcasing this, and all the work you do with the all other Arab artists. And yeah, it's really important, so appreciate it.
Thank you. And then one more time for everyone who's watching. If you have not seen Sirens, which like I said, I should hope you have since you watched this, It is available to watch right now as part of the Arab Women in the Arts Showcase. If you go to arabfilm.us/women, you can rent it there. Or if it is before April 8th, you can get a ticket to see it in Brooklyn at Film Noir. And if it is after the showcase, it is available digitally across the US through Oscilloscope Labs. So seek it out. You won't be disappointed. And if you want to check out more of the Arab Women in the Arts Showcase, once again, arabfilm.us/women. Thank you, Rita.
You, Yasmina.